Kyle, go back to your analogy. You're a teenager still trying to figure out how you drive, telling somebody else who's sitting next to you how they should drive. And it's going to be unfamiliar. You're going to get some stuff wrong because you've never been through it before. And there's going to be some practical limitations. But I just see that light switch between certified and non-certified when they get to that certification moment and they realize, I understand this now. I can now be of real value to my customers. It's amazing to see.
It is, absolutely. They get certified themselves. They know what is expected. They're familiar with everything now, and then they're able to go to their client, be that expert for them that the client is relying on. They're already relying on their MSP to handle all of their outsourced IT, and this is just another evolution of becoming that trusted advisor for the client and really cementing yourself into that relationship with the client and them looking at you, the MSP.
So if you're an average MSP today and you're starting or you've been having with increasing progression, conversations with customers or maybe with your own peers at conferences about the topic of compliance. If you're that type of an MSP, then don't worry, you're normal. Everybody's having these types of conversations. The question, which has rapidly changed, I would say, over the last 12 months, is now no longer just what do I as an MSP have to do to become compliant, but it's also what is my role as an MSP in the compliance ambition of my customers. And that is a completely interesting and new concept that we are just starting to embrace as a profession. Today, we're going to be talking about that. We're going to unpack a lot of detail and try to get you some very meaningful, actionable items and intel to base that off of. So I think, Kyle, maybe I'll start with you and just ask a question, which is, it doesn't seem like we have a conversation today with a member managed service provider organization that doesn't in some way deal with either the MSPZone compliance or security or cyber hygiene, but also the customers. We're hearing a lot about the customers. What are you hearing?
Yeah, hearing a few different scenarios that all kind of end up in the same area that is compliance as a service. Some conversations are beginning with, hey, my MSP, I see you guys have a SOC 2. We, your client, need a SOC 2. Can you help us get a SOC 2? Or we want to see what our security posture is against our industry framework. Can you help us with that? Can you help us identify these gaps, help us remediate those? Different consulting initiatives, the list kind of goes on, but it all sort of boils down to the same general concept of compliance as a service.
Yeah. And we call it compliance as a service, but the MSPs and the customers are all going to have their own kind of dialect, right? They're going to be using a different term. The title of this this episode we're calling vCISO, but honestly, that's kind of limiting. I don't I think vCISO is one of many different options that MSPs have available. So you used compliance as a service, vCISO, vCIO, consulting, just part of your enhanced managed services package. I think any of those things are quite appropriate. It's what you do and how you do it that we're going to be talking about. So I will start here with one it's a prerequisite. It's a really, really solid, smart idea. You're all good MSPs. You want to be smart. This is what I would be doing. Even if you're not ready to roll out a vCISO compliance offering just yet, I would really be first looking at getting certified myself as an MSP organization. That's what I would do first. Why would I do it that way? Things are going to become so much simpler, smoother, and make a lot more sense once you have your own certification under your belt. I say that for many, many reasons, but I'll give you a couple, right? Number one, you're going to have a much deeper understanding of what your customers are asking you for, right? Especially if you're like Kyle, like you said, when they come to you and say, "Hey, I think I might need an ISO, or I think I might need a SOC 2 report. Can you help me?" If you're an MSP and you've never done that yourself, you're going to be kind of like imagining, could I help them? Can I really imagine what it's like to go through that without me doing it? It puts them at a little bit of a disadvantage, doesn't it?
It certainly does. I think a good analogy would be I would assume most of our listeners here have their driver's license, and you had to go to school to learn how to drive. You went through the process of learning how to parallel park and to turn and come to a complete stop. And in that process, you became a proficient driver, enough so that they gave you a driver's license. And now, if you need to teach someone how to drive, you've got the skill set, at least the basic understandings of what it's going to take to get that person up to speed to be able to pass a driving test. So it would be difficult to not know how to drive and try to teach someone how to drive. I think that would put your client in danger and also anyone else that happens to be on the road that day.
Good. I love that analogy, Kyle. That's great. Learn to drive yourself before you teach or help someone else to learn how to drive. We're going to go over 7. There's probably more, but these are 7 really good kind of fundamentals for building and launching a vCISO, compliance as a service, vCIO, consulting, managed services offering, whatever it is, but based around compliance, cyber hygiene. And these are going to be core fundamentals that I think will really, really help you to do this successfully. Number one, understand market need. That is to say, you have to be able to know what's going on in your own market, right? Your customers. If you have customers, on average, most MSPs have 100 or so customers, give or take, in managed services. And so understanding what each of them needs and being able to categorize them effectively to say, okay, I have a certain number of banking, I have a certain number of insurance, maybe I have a certain number of medical, right? Each of those different service verticals, guess what? They come with different regulations, different pressure points, different frameworks even that they have to be concerned about. And by extension, so do you. That's build an understanding of what you need in terms of your market demand. And Kyle, I mean, I don't think we talk to anybody who has just one very easy to understand market category. It's a mixed bag almost always, is it not?
It's almost always a mixed bag, and even those that are vertical specific, if they're a vertical in healthcare, HIPAA is a very complicated and confusing law to understand. So even if they've only got one type of client, there's not necessarily a dry and cut way to approach it.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And look, we can help you if you have multiple verticals. That's kind of our specialty is getting you set up on that path. But you first, as an MSP, need to understand your market, understand where the demand is coming from, and be able to articulate that and understand what your customers are telling you so that you can respond with an effective offering. Number 2, you need to really define your service offering. It gets down to what we have been talking about for many, many years here, which is you need a service catalog. As an MSP, you have to have a service catalog. And guess what? If you're going to be delivering vCISO, compliance as a service types of offerings, they should probably be a product catalog or product offering inside your service catalog. So there, Kyle, again, I don't want to boil the ocean, but it seems to me that we have seen so many different types of service offerings. I mentioned a few at the beginning. There's no real hard and fast rule, is there? I mean, it's really what the MSPs feel comfortable doing in their particular situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So speak with your clients, hear what they are wanting, figure out what you can deliver, what tools do you already have that you could potentially leverage, what skill sets does your team already possess, and define an offering that fits with your MSP, with your business. Don't try to do too much too soon. Find something that's efficient and repeatable, and then grow when you're ready.
Yeah. good advice. Number 3, compliance as a service, vCISO, whatever we're calling it. There are MSPs who have just what I'll call they've baked into their core managed services offering some enhanced cybersecurity thresholds, which is to say, they're saying things like, 10, maybe 5 years ago, if an MSP customer said, I don't want to back up my data, take that off my proposal for this year, and I don't want multi-factor authentication turned on, leave that off, I'm not paying for it. Those types of things are going away as options, right? They're including them, and they're saying, you don't get to make a decision on that. You're getting it, like it or not. It's what is in your best interest. But that's not necessarily the case with compliance, because you're going to have, like we said, a variety of different types of service models. And so with compliance as a service, we see MSPs that are starting to flirt with 1, 2, or maybe 3 different models. And Kyle, if I'm thinking about this clearly, there's a lot of MSPs that are just meeting immediate demand and getting comfortable with doing stuff like running a customer through a no certification framework. Or maybe another MSP is running their customer through an actual audit, like a SOC 2. So there is no one size fits all, is what I'm seeing.
Agreed. Yeah, I haven't seen any one size fits all either. There's some MSPs that use compliance as a service as a lead generation opportunity. So a client that they're not even working with yet, just take them through a basic cybersecurity assessment to help them identify potential gaps that they may not be aware of and how their managed services could help to remediate those gaps. There's MSPs that use this as part of their existing QBR process to just beef up that offering and that engagement that they have with the clients. And then, yes, to your point, we certainly have worked with MSPs that have clients that need a specific audit or certification outcome, and the MSP is able to help guide the client through that process.
Yeah, good advice. Next, I think that it is really, really worth thinking about deploying a minimum threshold in your managed services offering. And it doesn't mean that you can't have multiple levels, but I think that we are now at the point where every MSP on the planet, with a really, really select minority few who this would not apply to, but the vast majority of MSPs on the planet, even your lowest offering ought to be cyber hygienic enough that it would pass muster across any number of published and relevant cyber frameworks. So I think that's where we are today. I think that that's where we're definitely headed to tomorrow. We are absolutely not going backwards. So this is not like where the floor is getting lower and lower. No, the MSPs that we're talking to, and Kyle, I'd love your opinion on this. Everybody seems to be saying, even if they're not really going full into compliance as a service yet, they're doing that security baseline, and they're saying nobody is avoiding this minimum threshold. Everybody's in, and it's having good impact, right? No one's really saying no that we're hearing of.
No, even on the debatably the more extreme side, we've heard of MSPs that are getting rid of clients that refuse to meet them at their floor, but it's proved to work out with them. They've become more efficient and gained more clients that are at the threshold or above of where they want them to be from a security posture. It's making the MSP's life easier and certainly less risky.
Yeah, I think I'm always, I know a lot of MSPs, they talk about getting rid of customers who don't want to evolve. I think that that's probably a position or an action of last resort. I would like to think that everyone could be saved, but that's probably foolish to think that. But I think that MSPs now are at the point where they don't have to worry about, well, if I don't do it, then they're going to go someplace else. So what? I think the risk that MSPs have in keeping those types of non-compliant, non-cyber hygienic customers is too great today. All right, moving on. Building a skilled team. You have to have good people with this. And here's another area where this is no one size fits all, but this is not a tool issue. This is not you reselling a tool. This is you understanding what you're doing. Our methodologies will help you along the way, but it's still you as an MSP interacting with your customers, and you're going to need people to do that. Kyle, what have we seen in terms of MSPs who may not have a full vCISO on staff? They may not have a whole team capable of doing this. There are those that have that, but what are we seeing in terms of the spectrum of team capabilities?
Yeah, the ultimate champion really does vary depending on the MSP and who they have available in their organization, who has a bandwidth, who is already familiar with compliance and cybersecurity frameworks. But I think you really lose out on a lot of value if you just look at this as a resale opportunity versus an opportunity to become that trusted advisor for your client. So ultimately, you'll just have to decide on who internally is going to do that. We've heard of MSPs that maybe their CTO does it, a service delivery manager has taken the reins. Some MSPs have dedicated vCIOs in house that lead these projects, but it doesn't have to be a compliance wizard. It just needs to be someone that preferably has been through some type of certification with the company before, is familiar with the terminology and the lingo, and then is then able to successfully guide a client through this process.
I think that that is the biggest testament to um, what we are seeing now, and that is a non right. I don't want to diminish their skill set because they're obviously smart people, but I mean these are not compliance people, right? These are not people who have spent a career, in the compliance space, but they have been through Cyber Verify before, so I'll say that, and then they take on the what would be to many MSPs incredibly challenging concept of taking a customer of theirs through like a SOC 2 or an ISO, and they do it. And they not only do it, they do it well. They do it with, as far as I've heard, no real major issues, right? They just, it was some project management, so, a little bit of attention to detail, but they were largely following the platform and doing what they already know how to do as an MSP by saying, look, the system is telling us you have a gap here. Let's fix that gap, right? That's like directly in the MSP suite cell.
Absolutely. It's a familiar concept. It's just a different language. It's not really a different language. There's so much overlap in all the different frameworks out there that a lot of it can be done once and you can leverage that work to meet other frameworks. It's certainly not rocket science, and it's information and content that modern, secure, and professional managed service providers should already be familiar with.
Yeah. Let's talk pricing. Okay. So let's say you're out there, you're listening to this, you say, I'm in. I get why this is important. We're going to do it. How do we price it? Again, there is no one size fits all. I think that this has to be a factor of your internal cost, right? Certainly, and we didn't really, Kyle, talk about whether these should be internal, to the managed services division or department, or whether they should completely spin up a new compliance division. We've seen both, but both work, do they not?
Yeah, it ultimately comes down to how large your organization is. If you need a dedicated compliance department, then you need a dedicated compliance department, and that's what you need. There's others that have just integrated an existing consulting unit into the kind of the managed services team so that they're familiar with the client and what's being delivered through the managed services, and they're able to use that information as part of their consulting engagements. There's no one size fits all. I think that's a common theme with managed services.
And that lends itself also to pricing, right? We've seen the baseline maybe of, hey, we're going to put everybody at the same level. We're going to increase pricing by increasing value to everybody across the board, no exceptions. And then we've seen project, we've seen time and material, hourly. I think, again, I think it really depends on what it is that they're doing for that particular customer. But we're seeing this almost evolve as several, like maybe up to half a dozen new product service offerings that an MSP shop could monetize. Is that probably close to accurate?
Yeah, just quickly thinking off the top of my head, there's MSPs that are selling this as it's kind of a lead generation opportunity. So some of them are offering it for free. Others it's a charged assessment, so generating revenue that way. others that have built it into their onboarding process. So again, this is part of the managed services offering that's being purchased by the client. During that onboarding process, they're going to take them through a compliance and slash or security review. There's MSPs that have this as an optional upgrade, so an add-on to their existing managed services offering. There's MSPs that have a vCIO program, so it's an additional monthly reoccurring revenue that they engage with the clients on. There's MSPs that work with clients that have a specific audit and certification outcome that needs to be done. So we've seen them handled more like a project based, just billed out over the estimated project hours and their billable hour rate, and revenues generated that way.
Yeah, I think that the takeaway for me is that for decades, compliance has been a cost center for MSPs. And for the MSPs that we deal with, right, year after year, I mean, some of them going on for 15 plus years doing an MSP Verify engagement with us. They do it because it's a cost of doing business. I think those days are over. Like, I feel like it's no longer just a cost center. It's a key to unlock new revenue opportunities. And that's why I said before that you can't do this. You can't really fully appreciate and unlock the value, the tremendous value of compliance as a service, or vCISO, until you're certified yourself. Because up to that point where you're certified, you're just guiding, but you're not able to actually do a lot of that work. Kyle, go back to your analogy. You're a teenager still trying to figure out how you drive, telling somebody else who's sitting next to you how they should drive. And it's going to be unfamiliar. You're going to get some stuff wrong because you've never been through it before. And there's going to be some practical limitations. But I just see that light switch between certified and non-certified when they get to that certification moment and they realize, I understand this now. I can now be of real value to my customers. It's amazing to see.
It is, absolutely. They get certified themselves. They know what is expected. They're familiar with everything now, and then they're able to go to their client, be that expert for them that the client is relying on. They're already relying on their MSP to handle all of their outsourced IT, and this is just another evolution of becoming that trusted advisor for the client and really cementing yourself into that relationship with the client, and them looking at you, the MSP, as their expert guide, instead of looking elsewhere and trying to find someone else to teach them how to drive.
Yeah, no, really, really good sound advice. So to summarize, the golden opportunity of our age right now is, are you as an MSP going to engage with customers on the issue of compliance, or are you going to sit this one out? If you sit it out, it doesn't guarantee an outcome, but it certainly guarantees that a customer is more likely going to seek their answers from some other source. And that could mean talking to another MSP that already does this, or it could mean talking to a cyber consultant who says something that contradicts what you would have told them. And we can see bad results. We've already seen bad results happen in those scenarios. So I think that the rationale for MSPs to fully dive into compliance, vCISO, vCIO, whatever you want to call it, there's no better time. If you have questions, you can certainly let us know. But should you act this year? I think our guidance is 100% yes. Do it. It will have it'll have so many good internal benefits by itself, just going through and getting certified. But then when you start to do that same thing for your customers, it is going to be a night and day difference. And you will, again, as you've heard us say, it's going to unlock a ton of new revenue opportunities for you if you do it in the right way. And we want you to do it in the right, safe, proper way. So get involved, do this, investigate, ask questions, and continue to be that dominant, trusted source of information for your customers.